She was trespassing. That's what Maria Falls said, one hand still wrapped around the grip of her gun, the other pointing at my daughter like Celine was a raccoon she'd caught stealing birdseed. Celine lay curled on the old wooden planks of the lakeside pier. Blood soaked into the pencil sketch of an egret she'd drawn just 15 minutes earlier. Her left thigh pulsed red through torn denim. And Maria Falls, president of the Orland Pines HOA board, stood over her with the same dead-eyed look she wore when issuing parking fines. Bored. Self-righteous. Empty. You discharged a weapon at a child, I said. You didn't warn her. You shot her. Maria didn't blink. I am fully within my authority as security liaison under Article 14E. Defensive posture is permitted during patrol. I stared at her. Article 14E does not exist. And the HOA isn't law enforcement. My fingers slipped to the radio on my belt, not to call backup. Not yet. I switched on the recorder. Maria's eyes flicked to the red blinking light, and for the first time, her expression cracked. If you're reading this thinking HOAs only bark about grass height, hit subscribe right now. You have no idea how far some people will go when they believe the rulebook belongs to them. I'm Garrick Ryan. 12 years in police intelligence. 2 federal corruption trials. Helped bust $1 million weapons laundering ring run through shell HOAs just like this one. But this wasn't a case. This was my daughter. After my wife died, Celine needed peace. So I moved us here, Orland Pines, a place that looked like a postcard. A place with trees, lakefront access, and an old pier where she could paint in silence. The last corner in the neighborhood without cameras, drones, or gate codes. It smells like the wildlife preserve, she used to say. She said it made her feel close to her mom. Every Saturday she came here. Sketchbook. Earbuds. Shoes off. A child trying to stay whole. I never imagined I'd find her on those same planks with a bullet in her leg and a woman in an HOA polo holding a gun like she was patrolling a war zone. Maria didn't kneel. Didn't check a pulse. Didn't radio for help. She just stood there quoting imaginary codes from a manual she wrote herself. This is private property, she repeated. Her presence was unauthorized. We've had graffiti incidents. She was drawing with chalk, I growled. And you've been warned about hostile conduct before, Mr. Ryan. Right there. That line. That was the moment I realized Maria Falls had been building a paper trail for months, trying to frame me, discredit me, and justify whatever power trip she was sliding into. But she made a mistake, a big one. Because I wasn't just a grieving father. I'd read every line of the original HOA charter before signing. I'd flagged 6 discrepancies in their filings. I had access to the state regulatory enforcement portal. And most importantly, I knew the insurance clause. The clause banning weapons on common grounds. The clause that voided coverage for any injury involving firearms, patrols, or civilian enforcement unless approved by an actual municipal agency. That clause would bury her. I knelt beside Celine. Her face was pale. Her breathing shallow. I pressed down on her wound, whispering reassurances while Maria holstered the weapon she wasn't allowed to carry on land she didn't legally control. Somewhere across the water, a screen door slammed. Someone had seen. Maybe Mrs. Kane in 7B. Maybe Tomlin, the treasurer who always looked guilty. Didn't matter. I only needed one witness. One drone. One crack in her lie. Celine shivered. Blood pooled under my knees. Maria just adjusted her badge and walked away. That's when I knew, this wasn't about citations anymore. It was war. They taped off the pier like it was a minor construction zone. By the time paramedics loaded Celine into the ambulance, the HOA had already blasted a community-wide bulletin titled, "Incident at Common Area, Safety Protocol Reminder." A low-caliber defensive discharge. Non-designated artistic space. No mention of Celine. No mention of a 13-year-old child. Maria stood under the welcome pavilion, sipping coffee like she hadn't shot a kid an hour earlier. She even waved at me. I didn't respond. I headed straight to the community hall. The board had called an emergency session, not to investigate the shooting, but to run an incident review so rehearsed it felt pre-written. 3 board members sat behind the cedar table. Harold, Mira, and Tomlin. I didn't sit. I want the footage, I said. All of it. Mira didn't look up. The pier is outside the surveillance grid. How convenient. We've requested additional budget, she said flatly. I turned to Tomlin. He stared at the table, sweating. You knew this would happen, I told him. You've been nodding along to her insanity for months. Then Maria walked in, fresh uniform, steady steps, politician's posture. As if she hadn't stood over my bleeding child. I assume you're here to lodge a concern, she said. No. I'm here to notify the board that you're under investigation. Mira blinked. By whom? The Georgia State Office of Regulatory Oversight. The room shifted. Harold scoffed. Maria's jaw tightened. Tomlin flinched. You falsified patrol updates, I said. Emergency Protocol 17C only applies to environmental hazards, not security adjustments. And amendments require notarized state filings. I checked. Nothing has been filed. Maria closed her folder. This meeting is over. No, I said. It's just beginning. When I left the hall, witnesses were already peeking from doorways. The whisper network of every HOA conflict beginning to stir. I found Tomlin at the koi pond, sitting alone, looking like a man wrestling with his conscience. You going to tell me what you signed? I asked. He didn't look at me. There's nothing to tell. You're lying. Maria needed 3 signatures for a patrol amendment. Mara Tran is out of the country. So whose signature did she forge? He squeezed his eyes shut. You shouldn't know that, he whispered. I shouldn't have a daughter in an ambulance either, I said. But here we are. He finally looked at me. And in that moment, tired, guilty, broken, Tomlin Baris made the decision that would rip the HOA apart. Tomlin's eyes were glassy, reflecting koi fish gliding in slow anxious circles. He looked like a man who'd been holding his breath for months, maybe years. She forged it, he whispered. I didn't move. My signature. The patrol amendment. I never signed it. She scanned my signature from an old maintenance contract and pasted it into the form. His voice cracked. I told her the bylaws didn't allow armed patrols. She said, nobody will check. I exhaled slowly, the kind of breath that only grief and fury know how to create. She shot my daughter, I said quietly. Tomlin's lips trembled. I didn't know she, Garrick, I swear. You knew she was spiraling, I cut in. You watched the power go to her head and you did nothing. His shoulders shook. I thought if I pushed back, she'd destroy me too. There it was, the truth behind every silent accomplice. Fear. Fear of the queen they'd created. Fear of the monster they'd let grow. Before I could respond, my phone buzzed. Hospital. My throat clenched as I answered. This is Nurse Davison. Your daughter is stable, but she's asking for you. My heart dropped and rose all at once. I stood. Tomlin, if you want to do one decent thing, now is the time. What do you need? He whispered. I need you to stop being afraid. When I walked into Celine's room, the world got small again. She was pale, hooked to monitors, but alive. Awake. Breathing. My daughter. She looked at me with those same soft, hopeful eyes she used to look at her mother with. "Dad, am I in trouble?" she whispered. It felt like someone crushed my chest. "No, sweetheart," I said, brushing hair from her forehead. "You're safe. I'm here." Her voice was thin. She said I was trespassing. I wasn't doing anything wrong. "You didn't do anything wrong," I said, voice cracking despite every ounce of training I'd ever had. Tears pooled in her eyes. "I want to go home." I kissed her forehead. "You will. And when you do, nobody will ever hurt you again. Not here. Not anywhere." Something hardened inside me. Something final. When I stepped into the hallway, Mrs. Kane, the woman from 7B, was waiting. Hands shaking. Face drained. "I saw everything," she whispered. "I recorded it." My breath caught. "You, what?" Her voice was barely audible. "I heard the gunshot and looked out my balcony. I recorded from my phone. I didn't know what she'd do if she saw me." "Do you still have it?" I asked. She nodded. "I emailed it to myself. Just in case my phone got taken." In that moment, I swear I could have hugged her. "Mrs. Kane, you might have just saved my daughter's life twice." She wiped her eyes. "She's just a child. And Maria, she's been terrifying people for years." I clenched my jaw. Not anymore. By the time I returned to Orland Pines, the board had gathered again, this time in panic mode. Harold pacing. Mira scrolling through frantic messages. Tomlin sitting stiff and silent, eyes red. And Maria, arms crossed, jaw clenched, pretending she still had control. I walked in with the presence of a storm. "This ends today," I said, placing my phone on the table. Maria scoffed. "You can leave, Mr. Ryan. This is a private." I hit play. The video began. Celine sketching. Maria approaching. No warning. No threat. Just a drawn gun. And a shot. The room went silent. Maria froze, color draining from her face. Harold whispered, "My God." Mira covered her mouth. Maria lunged for the phone. I stepped between. "Touch it," I said quietly, "and the next time you see daylight will be through bars." She stumbled back. I wasn't shouting. I didn't need to. My voice carried the weight of every father who had ever held the world together for their child. "I have the witness," I said. "I have the forged signatures. I have the fraudulent filings. And I have the insurance clause." Maria tried to recover. "You don't understand the protocols." "No," I said. "You don't understand the law." Tomlin finally spoke, voice shaking. "She forged my signature. I'm prepared to testify." Maria spun toward him, betrayal in her eyes. "You coward." "No," he cut in. "I'm finally done being afraid." I turned to the board. "You have two options. Option 1, you call the state right now, file an emergency suspension of the HOA president, and initiate a full audit. Option 2, I send this video to every resident, every reporter, every state office, and every parent within 100 miles. Mira didn't hesitate. "I'm calling." Harold nodded, defeated. Tomlin pulled out his tablet. Maria looked around, realizing the walls were closing in, realizing the kingdom she built on fear was crumbling. "You don't know who you're messing with," she hissed. I stepped closer. "You messed with my daughter." Her confidence finally broke. She backed into the chair and sank down, hands trembling. For a moment, she didn't look like an authoritarian tyrant. She looked like a scared woman who thought power was safety, and lost both. It took exactly 4 days. 4 days for the state regulators to descend. For days for the insurance company to freeze every HOA account. For days for residents to erupt in fury when the truth spread. Maria Falls was arrested for aggravated assault, forgery, filing fraudulent HOA amendments, unlawful possession of a firearm, endangering a minor. Tomlin testified. Mira turned over evidence. Harold resigned. And Orland Pines, this perfect postcard neighborhood, finally tore down the rotten roots hiding beneath its manicured lawns. Celine is healing. Slowly. Bravely. We sit on the pier sometimes, not the old one, but the new one residents built together after the audit. Celine holds her sketchbook. I sit beside her, watching the water ripple under the late afternoon sun. Dad, she says softly. Yeah. Are we safe now? I wrap an arm around her shoulders. Yeah, sweetheart. We're safe. And for the first time since that day. I believe it.